This is the iPhone 14 Pro Max, one of the best iPhones Apple has released thus far, and I've been using this phone as both my camera of choice and daily driver since it went on sale in 2022. Now, I have to say that there's been a lot of talk over the last few months on whether upgrading to this from last year's iPhone 13 Pro is worth it or not, and by the end of this video, I hope you can agree with me that from a daily user's point of view, this phone is 100% worth it. So, let's start with the build. This version of Apple's most prominent flagship phone comes in 4 different colors. You have the traditional gold and silver returning along with 2 new color entries, space black and deep purple. I chose the deep purple, and although at the time they went on sale I really wanted the black, I'm very satisfied with the purple variant. This color looks great in person. It almost has sort of a luxurious character to it. Depending on the lighting conditions, this iPhone's color can look either rich and vibrant or low and saturated and smooth, but either way, it stands out and it's very tempting for me not to use this phone without a case. The stainless steel band and camera rings are color matched to this phone as they've been for recent years, but don't let that distract you from the gorgeous 6.7-inch OLED display. This screen uses Apple's Super Retina XDR technology, so the colors are arguably the best you'll see on a mobile phone. And with a peak brightness of 1000 nits, you won't miss out on color accuracy when using this phone out in the daylight. Now, there are 2 special things about this phone's display: the dynamic island, and Apple finally brought an always-on display to the iPhone. And I know a lot of people have been saying that the dynamic island is more of a gimmick, and if you had asked me when I first got this phone, I would have agreed. But as time went on, I found myself looking for more ways to use this. It's great to see that the iPhone doesn't have a notch anymore. Kudos to Apple for finally catching up. The way they integrated this into the operating system was genius. I really enjoy using it when I'm listening to music or talking on the phone. It's such a great feature that enhances your day-to-day use of this phone that I'm anxious to see how Apple builds on it in the future. The always-on display is another late bloomer to the iPhone, and Apple has caught some slack about how they implement it, and personally, I'm not mad at this. It took some getting used to because I thought the phone was still on when it was actually asleep, but it works. Tap to wake it up, the screen brightens, give it a sec, and it goes back to sleep. Meanwhile, you still have your widgets and time always there. It's cool. I like it. So on the performance side, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is pretty amazing. This phone is packing Apple's A16 Bionic chip, which features a 6-core CPU and 5-core GPU, and I'm not going to be one of those reviewers that rave about how fast this phone is, because with those kind of specs, and given the iPhone's reputation, the performance needs no introduction. Apps open quickly and close just as easily. iOS 16 handles multitasking very well despite having just 6 gigs of RAM compared to other phones. I can still get everything I want done on this, and the A16 chip has been no slouch at handling graphics-heavy games or high-quality streaming. And thanks to the iPhone having a 120Hz display, it is now that much more enjoyable to consume media and content. Your battery life won't take a hit either when doing so, and that's because of how well iOS manages the phone's power consumption. I primarily use mine on Wi-Fi throughout the day, so I don't have to worry about 5G killing my battery, but I am guilty of using the phone's camera for content creation as well as it being my main source of watching YouTube videos. Even on those power user days, I still can't kill this phone. The battery health on mine has dropped to 99%, which was expected for someone like me, and I am using the setting for optimized battery charging. So at the end of a regular workday of just texting, streaming, and talking, I come home on the average about 53% battery. Upgrading to the iPhone 14 Pro Max didn't come with a huge adjustment, and that's what I love about Apple's devices. They're prone to make slight upgrades to each new phone so that users don't have to manage that big of a learning curve. And with that said, this iPhone does come with some new features by the way of the dynamic island, always on display, and the 48 megapixel camera. The first 2, though very fun to use in their own ways, didn't mean as much to me as having an updated camera to play around with. And if you see my Instagram or Twitter feeds, you'll see that the picture quality and video quality of that taken with the iPhone 14 Pro Max is really impressive for a smartphone. The camera's larger aperture and Apple's photonic image processing engine have really outperformed my expectations and continue to do so to this day. And that's not the only piece of hardware that shines on this phone. The stereo speakers are loud enough and clear enough to almost serve as a stand-in for a small Bluetooth speaker. Not saying you should throw yours away if you're considering this phone, but it's good to know that with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you can still feel confident in its media playback capabilities. Using the software on this phone is a breeze if you've been an iOS user for recent years, and if you're one that's thinking of switching over, you might be impressed with how simple it is to use even the most advanced features. You can find those features by simply searching in the settings, and there's even a tips app that will walk you through everything you need to know. So now we're at the part where I talk about my personal thoughts on this phone and what it's been like using it for the last 5 months. Well, to be honest, I feel like this is as close to a peak smartphone Apple is ever going to create. It's finally caught up to its competitors in terms of overall hardware and aesthetics. The build quality is top notch, and the processor performs really well in both the single and multi-core scores. If you're a creator whose primary camera has been that on their phone, I feel like this is the iPhone to have. I've taken videos and photos with this that rival most professional cameras, and I feel that because of how easy it is to just pick this up and go, that it's even that much better for the novice user to put out some impressive quality. Depending on the need, there is a small group of people this phone isn't meant for. Those of you that don't have the need for content creation and or simply wondering if you should upgrade, you may want to pass if you're using last year's iPhone 13 Pro Max. Yes, you will be getting newer hardware by way of the camera, the always-on display, and dynamic island, but to me, those features aren't strong enough for anyone that doesn't have the need for them. And that's not to take away from them because they're excellent on this phone, and they're being improved even further with the iPhone 15 that comes out later on this year. But if you want it, go for it. I feel that with this phone, you're gonna love it here. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are if you bought this phone or are considering getting one. Either way, this has been Kevin the Serious Man. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope everyone stays safe. Peace.